Hello, and welcome to another Robin Hood moment. Across the city, we partner with the best organizations to help New Yorkers permanently escape poverty, whether that's by providing job training, high-quality childcare and education, housing and legal services, you name it. But sometimes, our partners lack a fundamental resource to serve New Yorkers, the actual space to fulfill their mission. Today, we're diving into a figure, 1.8 million square feet. That's how much Robin Hood has funded to secure real estate for community partners throughout our 35-year history. I'm Crystal Cooper, Deputy Director of Communications, and today we're joined by Susan Sack, Managing Director of Real Estate. Our conversation today is part of a series celebrating 35 years since the founding of Robin Hood. We're bringing perspectives from our in-house experts about the milestones that have defined us throughout more than 3 decades fighting poverty and how our investments have shaped New York City in the process. Susan, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start with the basics. What is the Capital Grants Initiative at Robin Hood, and how did it all get started?
So the Capital Grant Initiative is a program Robin Hood started about 20 years ago to help our community partners with their real estate. Robin Hood at that time was acutely aware that real estate was the thing that was preventing really good groups from expanding and actually taking some good groups offline when they had real estate issues.
And so offline, you mean that the inability to have space, to serve New Yorkers would cause these nonprofits to cease to exist?
That and the very specific example I was told about when I first got here was there was a pre-K program, an early childhood program, where the sewer line broke next to the building and was sending raw sewage up into the space. So it literally was closed because it was a health hazard. And the executive director, who was very good at running early childhood programs, had no idea how to deal between her landlord and the city to get that pipe fixed, as well as to safely clean out the space to be able to bring children in, which meant that children who were normally there during the day had no place to go, which meant that the parents then couldn't go to work. So the domino effect of a broken sewage pipe was monumental. And Robin Hood was really concerned that those types of things would take really good groups out.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because as you're telling that story, I think about what Robin Hood is most known for. And it's sort of our core grant making to ensure, the quality of education programs. But who is there to help them navigate these challenges? And I'm sure that this isn't knowledge that the providers themselves have. I'm actually curious, you are a real estate lawyer, and I'm assuming that there are not many of you in the philanthropy world. Was there an aha moment that set you on this path at Robin Hood in particular? Like, how did you get here?
I was introduced to Robin Hood by a board member who said, we really need to tackle this real estate challenge. It's becoming more and more of a problem, more and more of an impediment to the programs that we fund. We came in, designed a program, and then I thought I was going back to the for-profit sector. I was going to do a 3-month stint, all great, going back to the for-profit sector. And the more time I spent out in the field with our community partners, seeing the work they were doing day in and day out, with no roadmap, with no anything, they just were responding to need and doing this amazing work every day, I kind of fell in love and decided to stay. Initially, I was going to stay for a year. That's it, a year, and then we're going back.
Right.
And this is my 20th year. So
Amazing. Congratulations, Susan. So you're celebrating a milestone of your own.
I absolutely am. And I think it's the best job in New York City in real estate.
Wow.
Negotiating from the moral high ground is a really nice place to be.
When I think about real estate, particularly in New York City, right, the sectors of real estate and the sectors of direct service seem so vastly far apart, right? Almost like never the two shall meet. But what you've been able to do is to create spaces for schools, food pantries, administrative offices, job training centers, health clinics, shelters. I might be missing some. And it really runs the gamut. You've helped them buy, build, lease, renovate, finance these world-class spaces. I'm curious if you can tell us about some of the spaces you're most proud of and how did they help in the fight against poverty?
So hard. There's so many favorite projects.
And over 20 years.
We've built several schools along the way, sort of hands-on building large-scale schools. They're sort of milestone projects in our careers. But the thing that makes it all worthwhile is when you go to the graduations. and you see the kids going to college who might not have otherwise been going to college.
All because they were able to attend a high quality school and you helped build that.
And the building facilitates the education. There's no independent reason for the school. As much as we love real estate and as much as we love building things,
yeah,
it's all about the kids who are there. And in the course of building and opening and being there in that first year, as you're working the kinks out, you get to see the students and you get to see how they interact. And when the school building works well, it allows for a real kindness. In one of the schools who built, the temporary space they were in, the plumbing didn't work most days. I don't understand how you go to a school without plumbing on days and you don't know in advance if it's going to be. I walked down the hallways behind the kids and they wouldn't know I'd be kind of listening in
on a site visit, right?
and or to finish something up or correct something. And they had real kindness for each other. They had no stressors. Everything was great. They could eat lunch at a regular lunch hour, whereas in some of the schools they were in, the cafeterias were so small that in order to have enough lunch periods, they were having lunch at 10:30. Well, by 3:30, they were hungry. There was no more paying attention. Well, the cafeterias in the schools we built were large enough so they could run regular lunches. Everything about the building worked to support the education, and that was our whole goal. That's why we built the building. And to see the kindness they showed showed other students, and on graduation day to see them going off to college or to watch the videos. The real issue for me was they send around videos of the kids opening up their college acceptances online, no more thin or fat envelope. And I knew I had to save those videos to the end of the day because I would inevitably be bawling in my office when I would watch those videos, thinking, "Oh my God, these kids are going to college. I'm so."
And it's all this investment. I mean, it's fascinating because you're really providing a level of expertise and also just peace of mind that these providers don't have to deal with some of these stressors, and that has a positive impact on the kids because then they don't have to deal with these stressors either. I just think that's really beautiful. Can you tell us about any challenges in real estate in particular that you face, and how did this inform the way that you do the work moving forward?
New York is a big city, and there are lots of different types of property owners. And a lot of times in the communities where we're working, the buildings are older and have some challenges that you inherit if you want to lease space or you want to buy them.
Even as a tenant, I'm thinking about like the pre-war buildings, and you know what that comes with, right? So same for these CVOs.
And sometimes the owners don't even know the extent of the issues, and sort of finding the right middle ground between they have to have space, they have to be in this particular catchment area, they have to have a visible property for clients to come in. There are not a lot of choices. How do you make it work? And how do you make sure they're in legal space, that all the life safety systems are in place, nobody's at risk? And dealing with landlords who, not all of whom know exactly what's going on with their building. And trying to bring everybody together to make a transaction work. And how I make it happen is having an amazing team of professionals who come in to help with everything from, code violations to how do we make a space bright and inviting, and how do we take something that is a little old and worn and really make it special for everybody, to provide services with dignity and a space that's dignified. We spend a lot of time trying to have landlords understand how important the work is, and we want to make them proud as well as owners, saying this work is happening in your building. Some are open to that narrative, and some, we stay focused to dollars and cents, and we find ways to make things happen.
Real estate by nature, Susan, is sort of a sterile and personal subject. I'm thinking contracts, plumbing, right? You brought up those issues, or just an empty space with four walls. But you've managed to surface the human impact aspect of this work. Can you describe, some examples of these human interest stories that have surfaced as a result of your investments?
One of the interesting things we've had the privilege of watching this arc on is around emergency food. And in the early 2000s, we worked with several of our top community partners to help them expand their emergency feeding programs. And at the time, they were in very small, kind of cramped spaces that were not in great shape. They all competed for having the fattest cat that would chase away the vermin, and the health inspectors looked the other way. And they went, coincidentally, all about the same time to renovate and expand and really sort of bring up the quality of the space they were in. It was like there was a crystal ball, because they all finished around 2007, and they were perfectly poised to respond to the financial crisis in 2008 when so many families were hurt. And they were right there, and their numbers went through the roof. And then they were standing there again for Sandy when families were without anything. And they were right there. And they never missed a beat. While some of us may have left the city or done things until the power came back on it,
Right.
and doing other things, no, they were front line right there. And we saw it again in COVID.
I was actually wondering that whether, the pandemic was another time of great need, recently, and were your investments able to play a role in helping New Yorkers get those critical services at that time?
Absolutely. My last meeting before the shutdown, and was actually probably shutting down around us, was at City Harvest as they were making plans for what was going to happen in the coming days. And none of us had any idea what was really, we knew something was coming. We just didn't know what it was. So they were all gearing up. We cut our meeting short, and I went back here to prepare to move the operation home, as we all did for a very long time. And one of the interesting things, we talked a little bit before about the high schools that Robin had built. One of them had really expanded their own food service program, which they turned into an emergency feeding center during COVID, and really provided amazing support to families in the Bronx. One of my worries was that how were they going to reopen when school was ready to reopen? How were they going to reopen? Because half the building had been taken over by an emergency feeding program for families, and how was that going to work together? Which they have managed to make work.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to use a pun here, right? But the investment in real estate is almost like a down payment on New York City's resilience and ability to serve vulnerable New Yorkers, right? You don't know if that's going to play out immediately or if that's going to play out many years down the line, or both. But all of the work that you're doing just continues to impact lives beyond just fixing some of these contractual issues. You're out in the field, you're helping our community partners just navigate the range of issues they deal with in real estate. What is the core model, though, of the Capital Grants Initiative? Like, break this down for us on a day-to-day level.
So the initiative has two points of focus. One, doing the early work and making sure that projects launch in the right way, that groups really do their homework. We do a feasibility study. We look at all the issues. We bring the right professionals at the outset of a project, so they're really ready to be able to find the right space, and they're not going to make mistakes, which can actually bring an agency down. So they're armed and equipped. They're the best, sort of potential tenants out there to go and look at new space.
Yeah,
and they've done their homework before they've even gone out to look. How much can they really afford? What are their projections for staffing, for number of clients coming through? What does it look like? What do they think it looks like 5-10 years out? So our model focuses really heavily on the upfront, and it actually makes the actual execution easier.
Yeah, so what happens then? We talk about our early interventions. How do we support them throughout the process?
We are there week to week, day to day, whatever they need to make sure they have a successful outcome. Everything from kind of checking in on a regular basis to sometimes where they're actually helping them pack the boxes to move to the new space and think about what goes and what doesn't go with them. We do whatever it takes so that we wind up with a successful outcome. We are so proud of these projects they take on, and so in awe of what's going to happen in their new spaces.
Yeah,
that we want to make sure everything goes perfectly.
I think that's really interesting.
Can I jump in with one more piece?
Sure.
Is we have a small core team here, and we rely very much on a very large Rolodex of top professionals across the city, and we're incredibly reliant on a very large team of nonprofits across the city in many different disciplines to help do the best for our community partners, and we're grateful for all their help.
How has your work in the field and in your time over the 20 years at Robinhood changed your connection to the city or informed your connection to the city?
Robinhood was almost like I moved to New York when I started at Robinhood. Prior to that, in the for-profit sector, my whole life was going up and down the FDR from the Upper East Side down to work and back every day, and I didn't really see much else. And my first site visit, I was sent out to Bed-Stuy, and my second site visit, I was sent out to Greenpoint. And I really got to see the city, really learn the city, and saw so much I had never seen before. And now I can navigate just about the entire city on my own, without the need of maps or GPS. And I see people that I've worked with, on the street as you're walking from the subway to the site visit. And it connects you to New York
and New Yorkers.
Yeah. I didn't realize how small my world was in New York until prior to Robin Hood. And, I've been on, I think, every subway line now on the Staten Island ferry. And just seeing the richness of New York, seeing the diversity of New York, seeing so much more of New York, I finally feel like a New Yorker.
Susan, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to all of the listeners who have tuned in. We hope that you keep in touch with Robin Hood for all the latest information about the wide range of solutions we fund to help New Yorkers permanently escape poverty. Please visit us at robinhood.org for the latest news. We hope that you stay in touch and join us again for the next Robin Hood moment.